to the Educational Podcast, a space where knowledge and strategies are shared to help you navigate and thrive in the world of education and life. We have an exciting episode for you today as we will be talking about the beauty of mathematics in our world, and more importantly, how math can be seen as a catalyst to literacy successes. I am Dr. Sharice Roper.
And I am Karen Paysinger. Please remember to like and subscribe as you view us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget Educational Dialogue with Dr. Sharice Roper and Karen Paysinger.
All right, our dialoguers out there. Today, we are going to start with a little quiz. We want to know how many of you out there will confess that you have always felt, or at least felt for a long time, that you were no good with math. Math was just not one of those things that you wanted to talk about. We know that the majority of you are confessing that right now. And we know that this is you. You are that one that will say to others that when I was in school, I hated the math class. And during our last episode, we also talked about strategies to support social emotional development. And if we're honest with ourselves, we might admit that we heard the teachers say, when we heard the teachers say, please take out your math books, then we seemed to think that our self-esteem was starting to fade. We knew that if she was going to call on me, he or she was going to call on me, that things were not going to be pretty.
Well,
what do you think about that, Karen?
Well, I definitely feel like I'm not good at math. I have always felt that way. I get nervous, even when I go to Vegas and I play blackjack, it's like I forget how to add when I get those cards. That's just how I am. But, I'll never forget an incident in high school. And that has been many years ago for me. It was my math teacher, Mrs. Eby. And we were doing an algebra problem, and it involved multiple steps, addition, multiplication, numbers in parentheses, all of that. And as far as I was concerned, I showed my work. I solved the problem correctly. I came to the correct answer. But she marked the problem wrong because I didn't solve it the way she instructed us to. So for me, that was degrading. And, that just, kind of just fed into my math phobia. But I really didn't begin to understand math and all the different concepts until I was a long-term sub in 5th grade. That is when I had my aha moment in math, because I'm going through the teacher's guides. I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes sense to me. Oh, this is how you do that. So that's when I made math fun for my students, because I didn't want my students to feel the same way that I did. And so, I realized that I had to connect math to the real world, which was not done, when I was in school. And I think that helped me and my students so much, because, oftentimes you hear students say, well, why do we have to learn this? Why do we need to know it? Well, that was one of the driving forces for me. So, as a result, I got my permanent position, and, there you have it.
Right. You know what's so funny, Karen, is that just like you, it wasn't until I was a 5th grade teacher that I really began to understand math much, much better. And really thought about, being the best teacher in terms of teaching math with my students, so they wouldn't have those phobias and those kinds of feelings that I had. In fact, I'm going to be very transparent right now. that when I graduated from high school, I graduated with honors. I had the gold rope and, around my, robe and all of that. And I had my diploma had that seal that showed that I took college prep courses, all of those things. And then when I went to college, when I took, you have to take that little test.
Mm-hmm.
And the test indicated that I needed to take remedial math for that first semester. And I was like, I can't believe that, because I had done well in my math courses. Of course, I was a little embarrassed and all of that. In fact, the math course that I needed to fulfill my GE was the last class that I took before graduating. I waited the entire time, 4 years, to say, okay, I'm just going to take this now because I have no choice. I have to finish. But, as I said, as a math teacher, that was when I became to really look at the teacher's guide. I have to teach it to my students. And so that helped me to become a better mathematician. And so today we have with us Christina Lincoln Moore, who's going to help us to better understand, or at least hope so, why this seems to be true and what we can do to change the narrative.
Awesome.
Christina Lincoln Moore is an innovative constructivist educational leader who is tenaciously and profoundly dedicated to mindful inquiry-based learning to engineer formidable mathematics identities. Christina holds an educational specialist degree in mathematics education from the University of Missouri, Columbia. She served as the Los Angeles Unified School District. She served them for 27 years as a teacher, mathematics facilitator, assistant principal, and principal. She is currently the elementary mathematics coordinator for the Los Angeles Office of Education, also known as LACO to those of us in California. And Christina presents as a featured speaker focused on the rehumanization of mathematics for traditionally marginalized students by integrating mathematics, social emotional learning, and mindfulness. She believes the integration of SEL and mathematics can change the trajectory of children's lives. Miss Lincoln Moore is the founder of Talk Numbers to Me Mathematics Consulting and is the co-founder of Black Women in Mathematics Education, an international collective which supports Black women mathematic educators.
Wow, awesome.
Welcome, Christina. We are so glad to have you. And please feel free to, before we dig deep into the conversation today, just share a few words of your own with our listeners.
Well, I want to say first, thank you for having me. It is quite a pleasure to be here with you two esteemed ladies. We're all in that family of LAUSD.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say, adding on to your stories, my story was a little similar to yours. I remember being in 11th grade. I think it was 11th grade, or was it, maybe it might have been my senior year. I had trigonometry and I just didn't understand it. And, and my teacher, I said, I'm going to drop because I needed to preserve my GPA, from that gold cord you talked about. And it was just like, okay. It wasn't like, no, you can do it, Christina. I'll work with you. It was just like, okay. So when I decided to become a teacher, I knew that I was never going to let a child I was never going to give up on a child. I was going to make sure that they got it and that they loved it. I, like you, have that story. And unfortunately, mathematics trauma is pervasive. I was on an international webinar a few weeks ago In the breakout rooms, I was with someone from Sweden and Israel and all these different places. It's across the board.
Wow.
Trauma. And the whole theme of this was about math anxiety and what we're doing what are we doing to help it. So unfortunately, our stories are not unique, but there are definite ways to combat that. And as you said in my introduction, to rehumanize mathematics so that everyone has the opportunity to succeed in it.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much for that. Now, in your bio, you spoke about being an innovative constructivist educational leader. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about what this means, that idea of being a constructivist leader, or just constructivism, so that our listeners understand that a little bit more, and also how that helps to build literacy skills?
Wow. Constructivism is all about empowering students to construct their own meaning for education. So in every classroom, there's a power dynamic, right? You know, the sage and then the rest of you. But a constructivist thinks that we're equal in the classroom. I'm going to learn from students. Students will learn from me. And it is my job as an educator to be the facilitator to set certain situations where you discover the learning, opposed to always doing direct teaching. Because when students discover it themselves and learn from each other, it's much more powerful and much more lasting.
Got it, got it, got it. Now, what do you say to those teachers out there who are listening who might say, well, you know, how do I manage the kids when they're all discovering, right? What might we say to them?
Well, I will say I was a teacher for 17 and a half years, and this is what I did. So it works, it happens. And one of the things that I did for one of my number sense routines were number strings. Prior to that, I did time tests just like everybody else, because that's how, that's how we were taught. This is how you evaluate fluency. But I knew that it was hurting my students. As much as I dressed up that chart, which is basically public shaming of how far everyone's gotten, it still, and I didn't get the same results. They might have memorized it for this time test, but I still wasn't getting it here. So I started to educate myself. So I went from going to math conferences to now I'm a featured speaker all over the US at math conferences, because I said, okay, I'm going to do this because I love math and I'm going to educate myself. And then that's when I discovered Kathy Fosno, her program Context for Learning Mathematics, and I learned number strings. And number strings is a routine that you do every day to help develop their mental math. And you're basically just giving them a problem and we're talking it out. And students are giving their reasoning. And you, at the same time, you are affirming who they are as people. We have these shared agreements on who we are. And that, you're a mathematician. I respect what you think. We write down what they say, and we had strategy charts with students' name on it. So our students, when we were doing mathematics, they felt very affirmed as humans and as well as powerful mathematicians. And doing that strategy work every day, oh my gosh, I didn't have to do Friday tests anymore, because that was a formative assessment. I knew where they were. And they were just very, they became very confident, even cocky almost. And the thing about what you said, discovering, you're creating the situations where they think that they're in control, but we know who's running the show. But you created this because they have so much choice, and they're free to express their opinions, that they feel very confident in trying new things because they've had so much success prior, because that's what holds us back. We've felt failure. We weren't affirmed. We weren't made to feel like even if you fail, that it's okay. In a constructivist classroom, failure is what we want. We learn from it. We talk about what's our favorite mistake this week. What's our favorite no? We engage in that. So there's no, this fear and anxiety about getting things wrong. And a lot of times when we would do things, we get the right answer out the way. Okay, the answer is 27. Okay, let's talk about the justification of your answer. Let's get into that. It's not about answer getting, it's about discovering the mathematics. And I used to always say, let's put on your math goggles because we are mathematizing the world. I remember people would always be looking for me in my class because we'd be on the yard doing math. There's so much math on the yard, at the lunch benches, everywhere. And that's the way we want students to discover and love math. And the other thing, I went to the math teacher who I thought was the best math teacher, and I went to her and I said, observe me. I want to learn from you. Her name was Trisha Dye. She's long retired. And she did. She was a 4th grade teacher. I was a 2nd grade teacher. And she told me things like, one of my things, I would talk more so to the right of the room, or, other things that she showed me. And I was very vulnerable to her, and because I just wanted to get better. And that helped me. You have to find your people. I have this group that I have, and that's what we do. We invest in each other. We learn from each other. We lift as we climb. Being vulnerable, and then finding your group of people who you can, get down in the dirt and ask all those questions so that we can all be better. So.
Awesome.
I love that. Lift as you climb.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. And even the fact that you were even open to have a colleague come and observe you. Many teachers are not open to that because, they're afraid of the criticism, or they're afraid of maybe being exposed, or, people knowing that maybe they don't know how to do something. But that's the only way you grow, is if, you get feedback, especially from your colleagues. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your role as a co-founder of Black Women in Mathematics, and how the organization helps to support mathematics in education?
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. In 2020, when we were on lockdown, a colleague of ours, his name is Dr. Christopher Childs. He's got a very long title with Open Up Resources. He basically picks the curriculum for Open Up Resources. And actually, they're launching a new curriculum, and it's called Humanizing Mathematics. He said, why don't we're getting this group together with Black male mathematics educators. Why don't you start one for women? And he asked, it was myself and my partner. Her name is Dr. Deshauna House. She is a professor at, oh goodness, it's a college in Georgia. It's Gwinnett College. Yes. And so we just talked it out, and then we started. Our first meeting was in August of 2020. And the whole premise is, one, so that we have that group where we could gather and talk. One, a lot of us were math consultants, and talk about being vulnerable. We don't usually talk about money and how much you charge. And we started with reading the book, It's by Minda Hart's The Memo. And that kind of led us where we were. And part of that is finding your squad, which we were building, and talking about money. And it was very refreshing because many of us had never spoken to anyone else who would be like competitive about how much you charge. And that we were seeing, oh, we need to level up because we saw that they'll pay this amount for a white male, but Black women are the ones that do the work and are going to truly change the trajectory of Black children's lives by what we say and what we do. So what we do, we put names wherever and whatever area of influence that we have, we promote each other. I sit on the California Mathematics Council board. So I say, I want this person to be a featured speaker. I want this person. Oh, let's hire this person to do this. And that's what we do. So we network, we build, we do professional development for ourselves to build each other up. And then we send each other out into the world, feeling good. And the spaces that I've been in and women are like, oh my God, I didn't know that there was a space like this. And to feel like you can let your armor down and just be real. We talk about our children, we everything, and we read each other's books. So when we have we every week we have, we do a little bit of one of the books we're reading. Right now we're reading Tiffany Alice's book, Getting Good with Money. So, if we want to make the paper, we're going to know how to keep the paper, right?
Right.
So it's just, and we're in the process of becoming a nonprofit and launching a website. And what our website will be is a clearinghouse for all Black women in mathematics, whatever you are, math teacher, consultant, whatever, coordinator. If you have a website, if you have a book, if you have your dissertation, whatever you want to publish, it's going to be the one-stop shop for Black women in math ed. And it's just basically to promote and uplift us, because Black women do the work. And so we want to promote that and make sure that we're getting the recognition, because we do the work. We want the recognition as well. So that's why we are here. And we spell women with an X because we're promoting our wonderful X chromosome.
I have to admit, when Karen and I first saw that, we said, I wonder why she has the X. And then we thought about it a little bit, thought about it. And we were like, that's what it is.
Yes, we did.
Yes. So, it's funny that you mentioned, because I didn't know this, that there's a piece of what you're doing in terms of financial literacy. And one of the things Karen and I have been talking about is how we can level up that whole piece, financial literacy, in terms of mathematics with students. Because we find, like when we went to college, you walk by, you sign up for your classes, you walk down the hall or the road, and all the credit cards are coming. You sign up for 10 of them. And by the time you graduate, you are so broke, right? So how do we, or what do you think would be some of the best methods to bring that into the conversation when students are learning as early as, because Karen and I just talked the other day, we teach students about money, right? What is a quarter? What is a dime? What is the currency? All of those kinds of things. But then we don't do anything further, for the most part with it. So what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I have a couple. One, thankfully, finally, the California Mathematics Framework has been approved. And a part of that is financial literacy for high school. It's a big element because it's very important. financial literacy is something we all use, but we're never taught. And I too was walking down, I went to USC and I remember walking down the lane and all these credit cards. So I understand. And so, and I can give a shout out to Texas. Texas is a state that has financial literacy from K on, and it's actually a part of their state testing. They take it very seriously. And I think that first, having it as a standard, that it is a requirement, not just identifying currency, as you said, but also teaching it, and not teaching it in a consumerism way. You know, like if there's a problem about money, it's always like, you know, Karen's gonna buy some cupcakes or something. No, Karen's gonna invest. We want to shift that narrative of being a consumer to being a producer, an owner. So I think having open tasks, which we promote, these rich problem-solving activities where the shift is not consumerism, if we're talking about money, but investment. And parents, you know, because of my experience, I started very early with my children. I could have done better, you know, but they got their allowance digitally since middle school, because they had a debit card, and we, you know, I gave them their money. They had to budget, they had to learn, and all these kind of things, and learning to invest their money and save this amount. And, you know, my daughter's really good. We won't talk about my son, but but they got the same teaching, but you know, but it's very important. And I'm so glad the California framework now has that prominently a part of it. So, which means that the curriculum companies will need to add it in a better way. And we're advocating, and the other thing about our framework, the focus is on equity. So, and a part of that is what I said, not consumerism, talking about money, but investment, which is important.
Yeah. That's so interesting that we're talking about financial literacy with our children. I was just talking with my son, who was 13, and you know, he is totally into sports, and you know, he wants to go to UCLA, okay, and play sports. You know, I right, right. I said, well, you don't want to be a Trojan? He said, no. So
well, my husband's a Bruin, so you know.
Okay. And so he says, Mom, when I get my contract, I forgot what car he said, and all this stuff. I said, you know what? I said, that's fine. But you also need to get something that's going to, you need to invest your money that's going to help you make money in the long run. I said, because that contract doesn't last forever. That money will be gone. I said, so what you need to do is you invest in stocks or bonds or something like that. I said, you purchase real estate and you rent it out, and then that way you have your income coming in every month. So, you know, he just kind of like poo-pooed it a little bit. But then last week we were on our way home and he said, Mom, you and Dad should buy a house in Palm Springs, and then you could rent it out. And on the days that you don't rent it out. So I'm like, oh, okay. So he's kind of listening a little bit. So we do need to talk to our kids about money, you know, how you get it, how to spend it, how to save. You know, you can talk to them about, you know, your monthly finances. You don't have to go into depth about it.
Yeah.
But you know, they need to know we pay a mortgage. We have to pay utilities, all that kind of stuff, you know, just to let them know that money doesn't grow on trees. And so, yeah. So how would you suggest parents to approach the subject of financial literacy with their children?
Well, one of the ways I would say is what happened with me is I always went to the grocery store with my parents. And I remember the task, I had to always be able to calculate the change. That was, we had to be able to do that. And I'm sure a lot of children now cannot do that. Calculate mentally what the change is going to be when they see. So that's something very easy that parents can do. And what you said was correct, is letting your children know just a bit of your financial situation, so they know why you cannot buy that $300 pair of shoes or the whatever it is. And giving them money. They learn by getting the money and seeing how far that money goes. So when my son spends my money, he's very liberal. But then when it's his,
yes,
it's very different.
You got that right. That is so
like,
true.
Right.
So you have to give them money. You just have to, and just teaching them these small lessons. One of the lessons that I remember doing with a group of students, one of the things that's not in my my bio, is that we also founded a chapter of NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. We did that in 2016. And so we do STEM projects monthly with students. We started out with fourth graders, now they're seniors now. And one of the projects was looking at data in your neighborhood, the cost of housing, the cost of looking at what is in your neighborhood, like food deserts, grocery stores, these kind of things, comparing neighborhoods, comparing home values, and having these real conversations with students. And that leads to a social action project. It's like, well, why are there more liquor stores in my neighborhood than this one? Why is this house the exact same, but it's worth $200,000 less in my neighborhood than in this? So we start having these really, these conversations, and say, okay, well, this is it. So what are you going to have to do so that you can buy a house in that neighborhood, or to preserve your neighborhood? And also, what I think is very important is letting them know that they have power. You see things, you can make a difference. Elections have consequences. You can do something very small in your own neighborhood to make something happen. And it all comes from a conversation. And talking about money, and sharing money is a good place to start, because they can look around in their neighborhoods. Why is there trash in my neighborhood, but not over here? Why is this? And most of the time that answer is money, right? How are our tax dollars spent? If the type of schools we have is driven by our tax base, then what's happening? So it's good to have these conversations. And my children, they were always get tired of me. And even when we went on vacation, we're like, oh, we got to go learn something. Like, hey, we have to go. We got to do it. But when you're a child of an educator, it's kind of like
that's it. Right. Sorry, you're always learning.
always.
Right.
Just in fun little ways, and little chunks and little bites, just having these conversations.
Yes. And I concur. I have 3 children of my own. And as I'm sitting here thinking about what you're saying, and I'm thinking about the holidays coming. And so one of the learnings that, the children mine would, if they wanted something, let's say for Christmas, how they bring out all the books and you see the whatever. And so for them, it was all about convincing me or persuading me So they'd have to write a persuasive essay around why that item was the item they really wanted, and what they were, the whole thing, all of the pieces to that. So that was a part of and of course they were like, we've got to do this every year.
Oh no, I'm with you. My children, it was 3 reasons. Give me 3 reasons, and I need evidence, and I need I need data. So
Yes,
that's right. That's right.
yes,
That's right.
yes.
And then oftentimes when they wanted it, I said, okay, I will give you 50%. So we had to come up with
the rest.
Other part.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I did not do that part.
Yeah, that's a good
idea. They want to
idea.
go on a ski trip, or my son went, okay, after we got the 3 reasons, it's valid. Okay, 50%.
Wow.
And they start hustling, nickel and
Right.
dime. If I do this, will you give me
a Look, calling relatives. Calling grandma.
But I like that hustle. I remember when my son was in elementary school, he was selling slime.
Oh my gosh. Was he making it?
He was making it and selling it. That was his little hustle. I can't remember what he was trying to get, but that was his little hustle.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
So as we're talking about all this, it makes me really think about, Karen and I are always talking about our students who have been historically underserved.
Yes.
And so we're always thinking about, well, the statistics say this, or the numbers say this. At this time, basically in grades 6 through 8, I was looking at some data, and there were 4 to 5 percentage points fewer students who scored on grade level post-pandemic. So what do you see as some of the barriers for students and quite possibly teachers with these particular groups, pretty much like it says, historically just kind of always at this level, historically just so many percentage points behind and always struggling? What would teachers need to do differently? And I think you've mentioned some things, but what's like the first place to start? And the grade that I'd like you to, if you could think about it from this standpoint, I always thought to myself, I was 3rd grade teacher for a long time. And I felt like 3rd grade was that real space where it was like the make it or break it kind of a thing, right? You knew that there were a lot of new skills that you're learning. Everybody felt like multiplication was the big thing, and you were, trying to drill and kill the math, multiplication tables. Luckily, I didn't do that part because I knew better by that time. But just where is the place that you would start to at least help to make that shift or that pivot?
Well, that's a big ask. Okay, Cherise, thank you. But let me say, the first thing is that whatever we do, it has to be centered on equity. The definition of equity means that it should not be a predictor based on your race, your gender, your whatever demographics of your performance. And as what you said, we see that historically. So we have a lot of work to do because our systems are not equitable. We are not, even though we have a lot of programs and all these things, but it's not equitable. It isn't. So that's the first thing, that has to be our forefront, equity. The second that I would definitely say, and a lot of teachers, and I understand because of learning loss, and but it's not to go back to that drill and kill. That is not going to be the way that children will learn mathematics best. A child will learn best when they feel safe. That's why I always talk about social emotional learning. And those competencies, for a child to truly have agency and feel that they are valued in the space. Teachers have to create that safe community of learners that no matter what I do, I'm going to be loved. Even if I tore up my classroom, I as an administrator, I got attacked. All these kind of things happen to me. That child comes back to school, I had to treat them as if it never happened. We always treat children, because they're somebody's baby, they're somebody's best, making it safe for them, because there's trauma. There is trauma in around them, in their homes, possibly, all of this. Your class should be a healing space. It truly should. When I come there, I should be like, oh, okay, I'm in class. Not I'm bound up and I'm afraid I'm going to be cold called. I'm going to be, put on the spot. No, it should be a place where I can just be my full authentic self. And how we do that is I always say you got to spend time to save time. Those first 2 weeks of school, it's all about building relationships, learning students' math stories. Have you ever listened to each child's math story? Have you had them make a picture of how they feel about math? And a lot of them, it's bad. I've seen drawings where it's like, it's a knife in my heart. And okay, so this is how you are now. And throughout this year, I'm going to build you up and build you up. And in the end of the year, those pictures are always very different, because they've had a year of someone saying, I'm not going to let you go till you succeed. That's the first thing, spending that time getting to know students, helping students to know that they are loved and valued. Once students feel that in your room, and that's every student, no student should feel that another student is liked more than the other. Even the child that's tearing up your room, we still keep loving on them, giving them opportunities. And I'm speaking from experience and being attacked by students, and I still did it. So it's not, it's something that we have to do. And that's the first thing, is having those relationships with students. And the other is building our capacity. A lot of teachers are afraid of math. And we have to be able to be vulnerable. That's why you got to find your people that you can surround, so that you are comfortable being vulnerable and asking those questions, and not relying on the ways that we learn. We're not doing keep, change, flip, because what does that mean? What does that mean? What is the mathematics behind that? Let's ask those questions and deeply learn the math ourselves, so that we can help our students. But that takes time. A lot of times we don't have time. We have so many time constraints. So we just have to do a little bit at a time. Just try a couple of strategies and learn those deeply. Then take on a couple more, learn those deeply like that. And then slowly your practice will change. But first of all, it's equity, that we should be in a society that it is not predicted based on your race how you will perform on a math test. It just shouldn't be. But, and I will say, because there's a big divide in the math community, one part of the math community wants the things that I'm talking about, but unfortunately, there's another part of the math community that wants it to keep it just the way it is. And math is a gatekeeper, that only this small group of people, this elite group of people, have access to rich mathematics and can do mathematics. But we're trying to kick those doors down and make math a gateway for everyone to be successful in math. So we're fighting in different realms all the time, but if I was going to say one thing for a teacher to do is to honestly reflect on your practices. And I was never one that followed, I might get in trouble for this, the textbook, because once I learned the standards of what I needed to teach, I was always trying to find that lesson that would teach it in the best way. And oftentimes it was not in my curriculum. But being willing to, now let me tell you, so when I was a teacher, we had our interim assessments. And you have to be brave and you have to have courage to be a teacher like this. I didn't teach to the test. So, and we would be, our public shaming, putting up our scores up, and I would have reds, no problem. Because I didn't teach to that assessment so they could look good. I hadn't taught that yet, so that's going to be red. It's okay. But who had better test scores at the end of the year because I authentically taught my children. So you have to be brave, and it's hard because the drive and I understand as a principal, we're always, okay, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. But honestly, like I said before, we have to put in that time. And then we'll ultimately be saving some time, because if we have this culture in our class and we're doing these rich tasks where children are sharing their thinking, and we're doing this mental math where they're sharing their creative strategies and how to solve problems, it's going to help them in the long run. And you'll be able to, not only because you already know what they know, you don't have to keep teaching something and they already know it, but then you also can go even beyond what you are required to teach. So, but for a lot of teachers, like I said, it's because of their own math trauma that this is hard for them. So they stick to the guide, and not all curriculum are the best. I will say that. I remember it would be one lesson on this, and the next day it was something completely different. Well, that's not the way the brain works. The brain layers on prior knowledge. So we need to spend a little more time on that and wrestling with it, touching it, having those manipulatives and doing those problems, not just a worksheet. We have to go deeply in the mathematics. So love your kids, establish that community. And it goes and it goes across. We did literacy circles, reading those chapter books. That's one of the things, I'm not talking about math now, but that's one of the things I didn't like about the language arts programs. They didn't have the chapter books anymore. It was just little snippets of books. No, they need to have that book in their hand, and we need to be on the rug. That's what we need. Really read these full, texts. But I digress. But
it's all connected,
Yeah.
It is, because that becomes the culture of your class. And we know, like we have certain hand signals we use and and it just goes across everything. And that's the thing about what we do, the critical thinking we do in math, we do it in science. We see, we layer it in with our art, and data shows that when we focus on math, ELA will progress as well. But when we just focus on ELA, it doesn't necessarily make math progress. Because you have to think about what's happening when you're doing math and you're talking about math. When students are talking, when you come into someone's class, they should be talking, always in groups, working with problems, talking. All of that critical thinking, making sense of problems, all those mathematics practices, that carries over in how you break a text down in reading, and how you see patterns in the lyrics of the words. It's everything. And I know I'm biased to math, but math is what makes the world go round. I just have to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. So And with all of this, how does a student's awareness of algebra play into this? I know my husband was a secondary educator,
Yes.
and he, his thing is the students have to be proficient in math. When our son was born and he started preschool, he's got to know algebra. So I said, okay. I said, well, I taught kindergarten for many years. I said, well, algebra kind of starts in kindergarten, but I hear what you're saying. But algebra is key. So can you explain to our audience why algebra is so important for our students to master before they get to high school?
Well, that's a loaded question, but I'm going to answer it this way. because I personally think that we put too much emphasis on algebra 2, but that's another conversation.
Mhm.
But I'm going to say that, as you said, algebra begins in kindergarten. That's why it's so important not to give students algorithms so early, because they need all of these multiple strategies, because that is algebraic thinking.
Mhm.
So, for example, when we teach the strategy of doubles, that's 2n. Doubles, near doubles, or that's 2n plus 1. When we are truly teaching students all of these strategies, we are teaching them algebra. And so that's one of the reasons why algorithms, because what an algorithm is just a set of steps. It's not teaching the math of whatever the content is. Now, one of my pet peeves is division. I hate the long division algorithm, because when you think about it, you're just describing your steps. Oh, I brought this down and then I did this. You're not talking about the math at all. So if we are enriching our students starting from kinder with all of these strategies of how to really do the work of math, they will be successful in algebra, not the shortcuts. Because when you teach keep, change, flip, you're not actually explaining why we need to do the process, which will help them. When we say the equal sign is the answer, that is not correct. The equal sign is just a balance. So it's like we teach them all these little tricky things and it trips them up later. Because when I'm doing this equation and I have these two parts on the side, but I think this should be the answer, opposed to just, oh, I have to balance this equation and I have to do all these other things. So that is why we have to teach these authentic strategies, because that's what's truly setting them up. Now we get caught in that kind of thing, like I'm going to teach them these tricks to get them through my class, but we got to get them through so that they can be successful in middle school and in high school. So if we're truly teaching all of these strategies, and it starts with kinder, those counting and cardinality standards, kindergarten is one of the hardest grades, because if they don't get that at the beginning, from number one, subitizing is the basis of all math, being able to recognize quantity without counting, and building on that, magnitude, hierarchical inclusion, one-on-one correspondence, all these concepts. If they're missing that, it just kind of, so that's the key to get to algebra, is true strategies, not the tricks.
Right.
That goes back to what you were saying about building your capacity as an educator, as a teacher.
Yes.
Right? Because a lot of times if you were taught the tricks, and you feel like, well, that worked for me, so I'm just going to continue to teach those tricks, even though I hate math, right? So I think it definitely, this whole thing about really building capacity, and then the leaders of the school allowing space for teachers to do that as well. Because often I think teachers feel that they have to do it this way because Otherwise, my scores won't show exactly, what they're looking
Exactly
for.
right. That's
Mhm.
exactly right. And I feel it's just unfair. When you look at other countries that are more successful in math, some have a 4-day week with students, and that other day is all professional development for their.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, that communicates that the educator is valued
Absolutely.
and that we take this time so that you can improve yourself and learn so that you can give to our students. We
Right.
work our teachers to the bone. I mean, and it's, to me, it's not fair. I just, our system, the way it's education is in the United States, and that's why I said equity is our number one, because it's our whole system is not set up for equity. Our system is designed that only a few succeed. So
Yeah.
if we're gonna really talk about change, and I hate hearing about intervention programs because I hate that, because I think good first teaching is what needs to happen.
Mhm.
But our system, the way it's designed, is for you to fail and then let's buy an intervention program. But
Right.
that's
Mhm.
not going to truly help our students.
Right.
So I don't know, I might get in trouble, but I have some issues.
Well, yeah.
No.
Right. Well, and even with the intervention programs, I don't think we give the teachers or the students enough time,
Process.
maybe enough tools to really truly make a difference.
Mhm.
We just don't. I mean, and you're right. The education system wasn't built to be equitable from the beginning.
From
Right.
the very beginning. It was
Right.
designed to produce workers.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So it wasn't designed for everyone to go to college. And I'm not saying it
Yes.
has to go to college, but
Yes.
it was not designed. It was designed that this top layer, you succeed, and then everybody else will be manual labor.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So believe it or not,
Yes.
we are close to the end.
Oh.
You have just given us so much information.
I know.
Shared many practical applications and information. Before we head out, is there anything that we didn't ask you that if you said to yourself, before I leave today, I'm going to say this? What would you, if you have anything that you want to say? You've got about 1.5 minutes.
Oh boy. I guess I would say is being vulnerable and deciding that you want to pick one thing that you want to learn and do differently, really reflecting on your practice. I always told my teachers the key to being an excellent educator is being reflective of your practice. And if you look
Mm-hmm.
in the room and if only half your students got whatever it was, it's not the students, it's me. That means I need to do it again tomorrow in a different way. I'm not going to keep doing it the same way and say, why didn't they get it? So I think just being reflective, pick something small and work on that, and just adding and adding and adding to your practice. And that I believe teachers are the most hardworking, loving, compassionate humans in the world. And I love teachers. And I talk about mindfulness because we have to take care of ourselves, because we can't give from an empty cup. So we pour into ourselves, be reflective of our practice so that we can give out to our students.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm going to leave us with a quote. I always like to lead with a quote, and this speaks to financial literacy. And it is, if you stop at general math, then you will only make general money. And that comes from Snoop Dogg. And so I believe that definitely speaks to financial literacy, that our students need to know how to, make be financially prosperous by starting to learn how to work with money in high school or even before. Like you say, we need to start in elementary school, really. with our financial literacy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you talked about Snoop Dogg. He used his gift. He used his gift to make his money. And how
Mhm.
many students, because their souls have been crushed, don't know what their gifts are so that they can be that entrepreneur.
Mhm.
We don't
Yes.
want to be those spirit murderers. We want to uplift students so that they can show their brilliance.
Nicely
Absolutely.
said. Nicely said.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Please remember to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to also like, subscribe, and share. And until next time, keep elevating the dialogue. Sharice Roper and Karen Paysinger thank Christina Lincoln Moore for being with us today. And we look forward to hearing about students and the elevation of mathematics and financial literacy in the future. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.